Significant sell-off on markets last week. Did you think this was the end?
Not the end. I mean, we weren't going to go back to last year, March's levels, but yes, it was serious, and it is going to be serious going into the future. There are still, things in the air that could affect our market especially.
Global growth could be one of them. Prospects, major concern there given those woes.
Yes, most certainly. I mean, if you look at the Eurozone as a whole, it's basically the world's biggest economy. So if there are troubles in the Eurozone, if there's going to be less government spending, it's effectively a negative stimulus package. Higher taxes, less spending is going to be a negative stimulus for those areas. It's just going to lower growth, and you're going to have countries in the zone, for instance, Greece and Spain possibly, and Portugal as well, they're going to have very low growth over the next few years. The hope is that they can continue to these smaller countries, and countries such as Italy, France and Germany escape the worst of it, and therefore they are able to actually drive growth going into the future.
There's a package available, that 1 trillion package that the Angela Merkel signed off on Friday. Shouldn't that be then saying to investors, we can do this and just back off a little bit?
Not quite. The package is just a stopgap measure. It's a band-aid basically to get them through the next year or so. Unfortunately, unless these countries are able to go and actually change their spending, they have to do two things. They have to raise taxes and then lower spending, which is very difficult for any government to do. And they are going to have to basically impose quite draconian measures because they've been so loose in the past. They have to increase taxes dramatically and cut spending dramatically as well, much more than we've ever been used to, for instance, in South Africa. So these countries are obviously facing, disobedience from, civil servants and unions, etc., because their members are going to be affected by this the most.
Okay, we saw a correction last week. Where do investors find value now?
I think there is still value in commodity stocks if all goes well, if the Eurozone is able to control the contagion of this Greek and to a certain extent Portuguese and Spanish crisis. If that can be controlled to a certain extent, there's still growth in commodities. They are going to grow into the future. China is still growing. The numbers out of, I think it was Thailand this morning, were also very good. So Asia is still doing quite well at the moment, and they will obviously demand commodities as they grow.
It looks like it's going to be a better week. Asian markets are up. Are you seeing a better week, or are we going to continue seeing volatility?
I think it's a better Monday. I wouldn't say a better week, because you never know what's going to happen. I mean, for instance, last week, one of the big downturns occurred when Angela Merkel came out with an announcement about, banning naked shorts, which was a surprise announcement. No one expected it to happen, and suddenly it comes out of nowhere. And you can't expect or can't predict these things in advance. Therefore, you don't know what exactly is going to come out of the political sphere this week that might actually affect markets as well.
Right. Then we have that Asian super profits tax on miners, the Australian super profit tax, which is going to have a big impact on the economy. What's performance of miners? What has the performance of miners been?
Okay, they've been really good. I mean, especially if you consider the fact that they've recovered from quite heavy lows. For instance, Anglo American last year was at 135 rands. This year it went well above 300. Even now, even after this downturn we've seen, is still more than double what it was last year at the low. So it's doubled in a year basically. However, if you look at the Australian super tax, the problem with that is that if Australia manages to pass this tax, what it does do is it gives other governments around the world a bit of an example to follow, if you know what I mean. So other governments that have a huge export sector in terms of commodities might look at it and say, if the Australians can do it, why can't we as well? And there might be that kind of pressure going down. And there might actually be a contagion of this tax going throughout the world if the Australians pass it.
Okay, what's your position on the miners?
I do have a positive position on the miners, but you must be aware there are some negatives. For instance, these taxes coming through, there might be a contagion. There might be other countries, including South Africa, that might think of increasing taxation around the future. I'm not saying there's anything about South Africa at the moment, but you would expect if Australia, which is the first world country, people would think of it as a developed economy, is able to do this. Other less developed economies say, why can't we do the same?
There's so much uncertainty on global markets. So what's your strategy going forward?
Keeping tight watching stocks here, looking for value. There is value out there still. I mean, there are certain stocks, the commodity sector especially, where you could find value, and including our financial sector as well. There is some value there. The PE ratios are quite low. The growth prospects for the future are good. So there is value in the market, but just be aware that there are political events occurring in the world that could affect the market.